Welcome to episode 44 of Created by Design. It's been a little while since I've made a video. I certainly have been knitting, but I just haven't had the time to actually sit down and get back in the habit of making videos. Life happens, and this summer my husband ended back up in the hospital for a while. He's fine now, but he went through some rehab and is still on home rehab, but he was in a rehab center for a while. So that just kind of alters life just a little bit. You get some knitting done, but not time to be in here at the video camera. But all is well. And so I thought, before I get too much further into the fall, I want to get another video made. It is rainy here today in Oregon, one of the first rains that we can see, where we're going to have several days of rain, and then it's going to get nice again. And this is probably my favorite time of year, is the autumn time, and the colors here are simply beautiful. The leaves, we don't quite get what they have on the East Coast, but we certainly have some pretty trees. So I may insert a picture or two of those to show you what a little bit of Oregon looks like, at least down my street. I have several things to show you. I'm going to start off talking about my little critters here. I'm actually getting ready to make some more. I have kind of taken a couple of months off of making them. I enjoy them, but I like to do other things also. So this is my little version. Now you can see my kitty cat. Her face isn't on, and I'm going to actually have a part of this video showing how I do the face, and it's pretty simple, but I've had questions about it, so I thought, well, I'm going to show you how I put the eyes on and the little bit of embroidery for the mouth. So I'm going to hold up one of my regular size. Let's go with Charlie the chimpanzee and put Kitty alongside of, and you can see, if I can get him in the camera, that several inches shorter. Legs are shorter, arms are shorter, body is shorter, but I'm using the same pattern for the head. I've not taken any stitches out of the head. I've shortened up the body, shortened the legs and the arms, made the tail a little bit shorter than what the pattern calls for. But the body, all I've done is taken out a section between the decreases. I've left off a number of rows. I was going to count it out and tell you exactly what I did, but I thought, no, do it, figure it out for yourself. That's part of making these unique. Knit the leg as long as you want it to be, or as short as you want it to be. Take liberties. I think these are good projects to work on, to experiment and figure out your own. So the head is the same size as the head on the standard size cat. The feet are the same size. I didn't change up the hand, how I do it a little bit differently than the pattern calls for. I have simplified it, but everything else is the same. I'm using the same size needle. I use a 2.25 for the body, and that's probably why my bodies are coming out a little skinnier. If you're using Aryan weight or sports weight yarn, then your critter is naturally going to be bigger. So take liberties with that. There's no right or wrong. I say get a needle and a gauge size that you like to work with, and that just kind of makes your critters unique. Some of these are really cute on the bigger yarn and bigger needle. You can make them more pot-bellied, and mine are kind of on the thinner side. So that's how, and then these are the only two small ones that I have done at this point in time, but I'm going to be making more of these. So I'll insert a little part of the video that shows me actually putting Kitty's face on. We're going to talk a little bit about finishing up the kitty cat. I have the embroidery work to do on its little nose and the eyes. and I've had some questions about how do I do it. I follow along a little bit as to how the pattern book reads, but I also take some liberties and kind of do my own thing at the same time. So do whichever method you want. I've said in the past, and I just encourage us to, kind of make these your own. She certainly has done a wonderful job with how she has created these. So I'm not trying to say I'm doing them better. I'm doing them in the way that it works. Okay, I got out a sharp point needle that's big enough to handle the yarn going into the eye, and I have made a large knot. I went into this hole up here and came out down here. Previously, I already used some white yarn for this section of the nose, and I really meant to use the pink, but I don't want to take this all out. So I'm just going to go right up over the top with the single strand, and I'm going to secure my yarn right there in the very center of his nose, and I'm coming up about to where the top of his get my pattern over here, where the top of the little pink nose is right here, and I'm going to come right up over here to the side. So this is where you want a sharp point, because you're actually going to be stitching into the yarn, not going just into the open stitch. You want to actually split the yarn and not just be bound by the stitch itself, if that makes sense. I don't know if that describes. So you're wanting to not stay within the structure of the stitch, like the center of it. You actually want to split your yarn so you can get your embroidery work right up snug. And I want to take out, I got a little stress on that little stitch right there, and that's what I don't want to have. I want to kind of keep, that's why you want a sharp point needle, so you can control where your yarn goes and you're not bound by just where the knit stitch exactly is. Hope that makes sense. So this is just simple. Snug your stitch up close, kind of lay it across and see where it's going to lay, and then you just hope for the best. You don't want too much tension on the nose here. You want your stitches to lay in there flat, nice. Looks like she's only done just a few back and forth, and then she takes a long stitch from side to side, if I can see that picture appropriately. So we'll see what that looks like when I come right back up. So I'm coming up real close to where this came out at. And pull it. But like I say, you don't want to pinch your work. You want it to be snug but not distort your work. I think she hasn't done many more than that. That's kind of a tiny little nose. And I'm going to make one last little tiny stitch right here. And then I'm going to come back up where I entered in up here at the widest part of the nose, because it looks like she made kind of a long outer stitch there, and this gets kind of bulky, so you want a good sharp point on your needle. And then what it looks like to me is, see, she's made a stitch, looks like to me, and I'm going to go right down through the center of this pink yarn that's coming right down the front of the lip, and then I'm going to bring it right back up here, if I can, in one fell swoop. Let's see if I can get my needle angled correctly, because see what that's going to do is it's going to finish this edge off nicely by laying a long little stitch right there. So let's see how well. And I think important to, this gets real picky, doesn't it? This yarn that's coming down there, you want to make sure it's staying secure right in the center. So I'm literally going in the center of that yarn. Okay, and then I'm going to come up right over here opposite of where I am here. And we have to remember, this is a toy, kind of. And, you know, we can't get too precise sometimes, but we want it to look good. Let's see how that's going to work. Okay, I'm happy with that side. And then this side is going to go right, I'm going to go right in where this side came, where I came down. So I'm using that same hole. So then the decision is, where do I go with my needle? How am I going to secure that? How do I tie that in? Well, I probably do it a little unorthodox, but I'm going to go right straight through here and come out the back of the head. And we're going to, that's why you also want a fairly good needle that you can get pushed through, and see if I can get it through here on this side. Yes. And we just pray as we're pulling that it's going to be sufficient, and I think it is. I think I'm happy with that. I think I'm good with that. I think it's, so now we have the yarn back here, and then it's like, okay, now what do we do? Well, so now I don't want to split the yarn. Now I want to go in the center of a stitch. Now remember, we got all this padding in here. So I just do some, in fact, I'm going to take my pointy needle off, and I'm going to go back to a blunt nose needle, because now I don't want to split a stitch. Now I want to, one of my smaller knitting needles. Let's go back to this and see, this has the blunt and the little curve, and this will go in the hole of a stitch, not split the yarn. Maybe that's the better way to describe that. Okay, so I've come out here. I don't think, it doesn't look like I've split a stitch. I'm going to go right back in that hole, and now I'm going to come out over here just random. See, I came up in the center of that stitch. I didn't split the yarn. And make sure that doesn't pucker down, and it doesn't. And if you go not across one of the legs, but back down the stitch above or the stitch below, there's a little bar right there, and you can go over that little bar, and you can hide your pink yarn. It won't show. So I'm gonna come back out down here. See, I'm bringing my needle down here. I've just chosen the center of another stitch, not splitting the yarn. And I'm now over this bar of this stitch, but you can't see the yarn from this side. So let's do that again. So I'm going to go either up the bar that's above where I've come out, or the stitch below, and go over that bar. I'm not going to go exactly in the same hole. This case, I'm going to go above it, and I'm going to bring it down, show you, you can travel this all over everywhere. And I came out the center of this stitch way down here in the back of the neck. And all this is doing is securing. So I'll show you, that goes away. You can't, I'm over the bar of the stitch, but it pulls it inside and you can't see. So I never make a knot at this end. I'm going to do one more. Here's my yarn. I'm going to go down into the stitch right below where I came out, because there's that bar right in there. I can feel it. And I'm going to go all the way, so I'm zigzagging kind of across. When I come out, I'm coming up the center of a stitch. And I'm going to say that's good. I don't think that embroidery work is going to go anywhere. So what I do is find my scissors, because I know I brought them in, or I intended to. Oh, here's my scissors. So when I get ready to cut this, I want to tug on it just a little bit, just to maybe bring about a 1/2 inch out, snip it, and then the end goes inside, and you'll never find it again. So there's my nose. I'm kind of okay with it. Now let's get those eyes on, because that's what really gives personality. And of course, I didn't put my black thread. I'm going to grab it. It's right here behind me. So here's my black thread. My button box, I got this off of Amazon, a couple years ago, and I'm still using on these buttons. And I'm going to use 2 black buttons for the kitty cat here. And I think I had some buttons that are actually littler, and they were too little to work with. Somebody's going to ask me about the size of these, and they're over 1/4 and under 1/2. There's no marking on here, and I have forgotten. I measured them one day, but they're, like I say, they're over 1/4 inch and under 1/2 inch. Okay, I have all these needles out here. Let's put the big needles away and get into my little needle container for the eyes. I want a fine needle to go through the center of those little buttons, and I want a sharp needle. I don't want a blunt. So we'll just get this little needle right there. Take off. I'm going to sew with 2 strands. So pull off a good portion. Here again, I don't get fancy. My eyes are always in several different locations, and if my eyesight was good, I have to get this over where I can see it here to thread my needle. That is a tiny eye. Of course, I chose a tiny eye needle. It's going to go in here because I said it will. There we go. Sorry about that. But I'm sure you all kind of experience the same thing. Those eyes of those needles get littler and littler. Okay, so now I'm going to make a decent size knot, but it doesn't have to be huge. I'm going to cut away that tail end. I didn't want too much tail end sticking out. Now, where do you put the eyes? Well, I do kind of look at the picture, and then I look at the critter I've made, because they're always a little different shape, right? And we don't want them too close together. I do like to give the face a little indentation. But beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So, I kind of say, okay, well, that looks good to me. So I kind of know where this one's going to start. So I take my needle and thread, and I'm actually sewing into the yarn. I'm not just going, I want to split the yarn. I want to actually get a bite into the yarn. And my needle, or my knot, I can kind of leave on the outside, bury it. The button's going to go over the top so it won't be seen, and I go back and forth a couple times because I want to make sure that the button is secure. And I know there's eye buttons you can use, and just get whatever works for you, whatever you have access to. So my buttons have a right and a wrong side. One side's flat, one side's a little rounded on the edge. So I always have to make sure that I've got the right side up. Okay, I went through one of the buttonholes, And now I'm going to go through trying to keep my button kind of over the top of that little spot. And I'm going to go back now down, and my needle I've got pointed over here because I want to come up where I want the second one. This is where I kind of squeeze the face together, and you can move it around a little bit if you don't exactly hit, after we get it started. So I'm not pulling it tight yet. I'm going to go ahead and put this second button on to see if I like the placement. Usually I hit it right on. Let's see if I do this time. You just don't want them too far off. You don't want to give them too much character. Okay, I think I'm okay with that. They'll move around a little bit before I get them 100% secure. Now I'm going back in, and I'm going to go across over to this next button, and I want to come up in one of those holes. And isn't that always a little bit of a trick? Okay, I came up in one of the holes, and we're going to do that again, and I am going to start putting a little tension just to make a little shaping there in the head. So come down the next hole and back across, and I'm going to do this about 3 or 4 times, and just coming back and forth. I've never had an issue with the eyes staying on. Just takes a little patience there. Don't want to sew his tail into the into the eye. That would be a great look. Okay, so we're gonna make sure that you've got all the loops of the your yarn or thread, sewing thread laying flat there. And now we're going to go back through. These buttons have 2 holes. Some buttons are 4 holes. This is 2 hole. And but if it was 4 hole, you would do this going in and out all 4 of those. Just make sure your thread doesn't get a knot over here on this side. So just kind of help guide it as it goes through there. Okay, I'm going to do that one more time. And each time I make sure I'm keeping my tension. I don't want to get this too tight, but just give it a little sculpture. You don't have to. It's what I like to do. And that went right through there. And I certainly could use a longer needle. I just wasn't thinking too clearly and grabbed a short one, but it's working. All right. I think those buttons are secure enough. So how do I finish this off? Well, I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to come right up real close to the center of that button, of that eye. And I'm going to do like I did with the pink. Now I'm going to go back down, and I'm just going to come out over here alongside the head someplace that I could still find my needle, get a hold of it. And there's that. So now I'm going to go right back down the same hole that I came out of, but I'm going to kind of do the same thing. I'm just going to weave my extra yarn back, or thread, back and forth, going over a bar in those stitches. And I should have probably put my blunt nose needle on, but I think I can be careful here. And this is just securing down. I don't make an additional knot. I've never had an issue with these coming undone or losing any buttons. So when I feel like I've done this, I'm going to do one more in and out and then cut this yarn off. I could do a knot and try to feed it in there, and you can do that if you're feeling a little insecure. That's not a problem, but it goes away. And there. So there's our eyes. I don't take a lot of time to line up the holes being the same way. You can get as fussy as you want. But there's my little kitty cat, and somebody's going to love her. These are the smaller version of our wild animal friends, my interpretation. So I want to show you quickly that I've got another one started, and I just want to give you a little hint on what I do. And I do the same if it's one of the small sizes or if it's the standard size that Lois, the pattern calls for. But I have done a number of videos on doing these critters like the book pretty much is written. I knit in the round, so I've modified quite a bit. I'm knitting the clothes on these little critters. They're not separate. I'm knitting them on. So I started out this arm, did the provisional cast on with crocheting these stitches on, which then allows me to do the knitting, and I can have live stitches here, which will be the live stitches that I knit into the body when I get that far. So I'm making another one. In fact, this is going to be the teddy bear. And so I'm giving him this sweater out of this color. And so I started out the arm with that, and then I get down here to where his bear fur shows, and so this is the hand. I made a little pad for him, and I did a little Fair Isle color strand work, whatever you want to call it. And his sweater, I'm actually going to do a band of colors around the bottom of the sweater. And so when I ended the sleeve here, over here, I did a knit one, purl one, just like you would on the sweater if it was not on the body, and then continued on in straight knit. I'm knitting in the round so I don't have any seam here to sew up. So I'm going to make another arm. Actually, I've got it started, and that's why I did this part right here so you can see how this looks. So I've got my 14 stitches on here, and I will now use this yarn to actually knit with, and I will start just as she does in the pattern, but I'm going to convert this over so it's in the round and not flat. But you could knit it flat if you wanted to. But that's how I do it. And then I'm going to do the same for the legs like I did on here. I started out with the pink, and this is knitted on here to the body, and get my legs and arms knitted, and then I start the body. And I start the body because I knit the clothes, so that really cuts down time because I'm making them smaller. They're quicker to make because I want to use these to give away. And these are a little less time, still very lovable, but kind of doing a takeoff of what Lois has done in hers. And I still think they're cute. I think they have just a lot of cute personality, and a little less than half the size, a little more than half the size, I should say, of the standard little wild animal. So I'll be showing you the finished bear on the next videos that I make. You can go on and see my series that I've done in the hedgehog, and you'll see all the steps of how I make the body on the standard size. And those I'm not knitting the clothes on. The clothes are knitted separately. But I have done a detailed series, about 8 videos, all on knitting the bodies. So with that, that's where I'm at with these little critters. I'm still enjoying them. And I was really excited the other day. I found a store here in Oregon, Portland, out my way, that actually carries the sheep G's and a good color supply. So I'm excited to have some new colors to start working with, and they're all tucked away in a bag that I brought them home in. I haven't put them on the shelf yet, but that's my exciting news. So let me tell you, since I have Charlie and Maya the panda, I have to tell you my story about them. They went to children's church with me yesterday. I was asked to come in and teach a little part of the lesson, and would I consider somehow working in a story about the critters. So I made one up, and it was all about how Charlie the chimpanzee, who is outrageous and swinging all over in the trees and screeching to the top of his voice, how he met shy little Maya and how they became friends. That's the crux of the story. So it was fun to do. It was a very simple, short story, but it certainly had the children's attention. And there was an age range of, I think it was about 6 years old, up to 12 years, and it held their attention. So that was a win. And they did really well. They were well behaved. So maybe they're the first ones to have gone to church and Sunday school. I don't know, but they went yesterday and seemed to enjoy it. So that's my story about, my latest story about the critters. Okay, so now what have I been working on? I've made some socks, which I didn't bring out and show you, but I did want to tell you I am continuing to make hats, which will go to some teenagers in need in our area. And I'm doing them with good old superwash wool. I stay away from the acrylic. These just seem to hold their shape better. They're washable, so it makes a lot of sense. Super simple style. And I don't even know which pattern, actually, something on Ravelry. It was a free pattern. I just went with something very basic. And then I'm making the color selection of what I want to do. I have a great big bag of colors to work with, which I have to say is kind of fun. If you've built up a bit of a stash, it's kind of fun to be able to, well, in fact, watch this. I'll pick up my bag, if I can keep some stuff falling out. My great big pink bag, and in here, can we see, are lots and lots of colors, all the same kind of yarn. And so I love rummaging around in there and putting colors together for different hats so I don't get bored. I can do a solid color one like this once in a while, and it's good to have solid because I think the teenagers probably like the more solid ones. But you know, if you get bored a little bit doing that, then throw a little stripe. I don't think this is too outlandish. I'm going to put a pom-pom on the top of this. Some I will leave plain like this without a pom-pom. This is a 2x2 rib, and so it scrunches down, but it really is a teenage size. So I think the 2x2 rib just kind of draws it, accordions it in a lot more. But there's a lot of stretch and give. Just as a reminder, what I've gotten really hooked on for the hats is doing the tubular cast on. And I'll hold this up. You can certainly go on YouTube, type in tubular cast on. This is a 1x1 rib. This one here is a 2x2. And the 2x2 is done a little bit differently than the 1x1 tubular, but they're very similar. But I love the finished edge and the fact that this is very stretchy, so you don't have to worry about knowing exactly the head size. You can do kind of a ballpark head size, and this tubular cast on is really nice. It pops back into shape, has a lot of give to it, and yet holds its shape. So the other thing that I want to tell you, where you're changing colors like this, I wanted the turn up edge not to have any show any place that I've added a different color. So I made the turn up edge all one color, and down inside here is where now I start using a second color. And of course you have to do something with that orange tail, right? And so I've put it in right here. Get this turned out here so you can see. I left a little bit of the end. So instead of feeding it in around this way, I follow right up one of the ribs on the inside, and you don't have to worry about it stretching and coming out of your hat if you go up the rib. That's pretty simple, but sometimes we forget. It seems to be more natural to maybe go around when you're weaving in your new color, but I find going up a rib really camouflages it. However, I don't want that down here on the brim that you're turning up, because you can see when you turn it over just a little bit the off edge of where you've woven it in. So I didn't want that to appear on the outside of my rib or my brim. So how I accomplish that is the brim is one solid color, and then up here in the body of the hat is where I did the striping. And so to offset this solid color down here, I went then with a solid color up in the crown, and then I had lots of orange, so I just made an orange pom-pom. So that's one little hint. This hat here is not, oh, it is too a tubular cast on. Never mind. I thought I had one here that wasn't a tubular cast on. Well, I don't, but that's okay. So I want to show you another hat that I've done. I've always wanted to do some of the Mosaic knitting, and so I did that in this hat. This is definitely an adult hat. I think I might go ahead and make the little tassel that they recommend that would go right on down here at the end of the ear flap. But the Mosaic is kind of fun. It's done very differently from Fair Isle. Fair Isle, you're working with two colors as you go across the row. I hold one color in my right hand and a different color in my left hand. With this, every row that you see here is actually, you've gone around twice. Once with, for instance, the first row here, once with the gray, and you're slipping the stitch that will become the blue. And then after you've gone all the way around with your gray, where you've slipped the stitch, then you're using the blue only and just slipping then all the gray stitches until you get over to where the pattern calls for blue again. So you're going around twice in every row, but you're only working with one color at a time. So there is that advantage. And it does have a definite unique look. So every row is done twice. So there are some things to think about with doing Mosaic. I think a little more to remember than when you're doing Fair Isle. I love Fair Isle. And sometimes if I just get too bored with knitting a solid color, I just have to take on a Fair Isle project because I like doing it. I do have one other hat and already started. I knit on Wednesdays with a group of gals, and I like to have small projects to take for that. So I've actually started a new hat, just started it last night. It's going to have a motif around it. It's actually going to have a little bit of a Scandinavian flavor to it because I'm going to do the snowflake design. It's a traditional design in the white, and I'm using a dark navy blue. So, and I'm using my size 7 flexi flip needles. Love them for socks, and these are great for hats. This is the tubular cast on. As you can tell, we have a lot of nice stretch, and this is a 2x2 cast on. So it's easy to do, but I would just say go on and check out, I think it's Pink Knitting on YouTube, and she does such a good job. So there's no point for me to re-show you the tubular when that's already on YouTube, and she's done such an excellent job. So that's my hat project for Wednesdays. And then to catch you up on a project that I got, well, I'm going to do this one first, and then I'll go to the throw. So some time ago, actually last year, I finished up this boha stickning. It's hard to say. It's Scandinavian, actually Norwegian, and I talk about it in one of my other episodes, and having made this sweater, and it is Mongolian cashmere, and I love it. It's wonderful. It had a tiny bit of pelling the first couple of times that I wore it, and then I just have a nice little, we probably all have one, the little thing that you use to remove if you get some pelling. And I was told that it's going to do that like in the beginning, and then it will stop. And that's what I have found. So I had a little bit in the beginning, not much. And then I used my little tool on it. Actually, I have one that is has a little, it vacuums it up when you scrape. It's battery operated, and it works really well. And so I'm just really pleased with this. I had some extra left over, quite a bit left over, because I ordered up thinking I was going to make another sweater, and I did. But this one I talked about I think in my last video, and I want to read this. It is by Yoko, Hatta. I got the pattern off of Ravelry, and it's called Ando, A-N-D-O. And this is a terrific pattern. I was going to put it on, but I thought, well, if I wear it, then I can't really talk about it very easy. When you wear it, it kind of fits you like a wrap, because you can see the sleeve. It's a real drop shoulder. The sleeve is out here, and it kind of comes in at an angle, so it has a different feel when you wear it, even than this with a even though this is a little bit of a, well, it's a raglan sleeve, so it fits even different than a total set-in sleeve. But this is really fun because, hold this up, this is the back of the sweater, so you can see the seam right here from the neck. Should have somebody in here holding this, down to here. That is a seam. So this front panel, where the design was all knitted up this way, binding where this seam is back here, binding that off. Well, I didn't bind off like the pattern says. I left my stitches on the needle, so they were live stitches, so that I could do a 3 needle bind off for making the seam. And I got to tell you, that is the slickest way to put a seam together, is when you can do a 3 needle bind off. So that meets up at the neck, down through the shoulder blades. It's where this seam goes. And then the back of the sweater was knitted from the bottom up to about the where your shoulder blades start. So it was just a straight oblong piece, then that got sewn across the top to where this center seam was back there. Well, since I like to do 3 needle bind offs so well, when I did this back panel, I did not bind off the stitches. I left them on the needle, and then I did have to come through and pick up the stitches that were on this bottom side of the angled piece, so that piece that comes across this way. I did have to pick up the same number of stitches as I had on my needle for this back panel, and once again I did a 3 needle bind off, and it just gives such a nice finish. Quick and easy to do for me. It was a little more tedious picking up all the stitches, but I picked up, like I said, I knew how many stitches I had on my back panel piece, this piece back here, so I picked up the same number of stitches then on this part of the neck where that's sewn together, and it came out really smooth. So I'm pretty happy with that. I did have two seams on each arm. Because this is a decrease down through here, there was no way to leave live stitches on this sleeve because you're knitting from here, from down here up. So this here is a seam that I stitched together, and that was totally tolerable. This has a nice little simple finish to the edge of the sleeve, and it just allows it to give a little roll. Kind of nice for a change, not having the rib. And then, let's see, there was one other thing I was going to show you. So coming up the front of the sweater. Now this is pretty unorthodox for most of our American sweaters. We normally think, well, we have to pick up stitches and knit on a band. This is not that. I'm going to hold this here to see if you can see how this naturally rolls in. Well, if I unroll it, that's my finished edge. And the intent of the pattern is for this edge of the sweater just to roll in, kind of matches the roll on the sleeve, except for this rolls in, the sleeve rolls out, but that's the finish edge. And when you put this sweater on, I've actually given it to one of my daughters because I have a great sweater. It fit her great. But when you put it on, you kind of feel like you're putting on a shrug. It drapes on you kind of like what a cape would a little bit, but because this yarn for a sweater like this, it feels really nice. So that's my story. I will actually post the name of this sweater and the designer, but I did get that off of Ravelry, and I think I paid for that pattern. I don't think it was a freebie. So that's catching you up on my sweater projects. I actually am kind of excited because I do have a number of sweaters that I've made, and in Oregon, we don't get all that much really cold weather. And so I'm kind of excited that I can get my sweaters out now and wear them for a couple of months here. And that's kind of good because they've been packed away for several months. So now I want to show you, this is an old project, an older one I should say. This is a throw, and I've loved it. It's really a pretty good size for me. But what I decided was I wanted it pretty much the same width, but I wanted it a little bit longer because when I'm sitting and knitting, I like to have something wrapped over the end of my feet. So I did make a second throw, and this one's probably almost, I would say almost a foot longer, and I will post that measurement on screen here. But this project was all about using the same design, but having fun with color. And it's just impossible for you to really get a full appreciation for all the fun that I had with the colors. And I chose a pattern. It's Alice Starmore. in one of her pattern design books, Graft books. I'll post the name of that. And I don't know if it's a pineapple or a pomegranate, but it's this shape. It can be whatever you want it to be. And this is Jameson yarn from Shetland, and I use some Jameson and Smith. The two are very compatible. So my only rule, if I had a rule, was try to keep the background in the darker shades. And I pretty much did that. And then I let my eye just play with what looked good to me. I thought about getting out the color wheel and kind of, letting that be my guiding light. And then I thought, I want to just trust my eye and see what happens. Good or bad, we're going to see what happens with that. So I'm going to hold up a section here and see. So each pomegranate has at least 3 or 4 shades in the actual pattern itself. Some of them are real subtle changes, and some of them are kind of unorthodox that maybe you would say, well, the color wheel would not suggest doing that. That's why I didn't follow the color wheel, because I just wanted to see what happens. I've done a lot of painting in times past, and mixing wet medium, blending, doing shading with wet medium is very, very different from using a fiber, because the color change, you don't get to blend the same way, right? Unless you have a plethora of colors to work with. And I have quite a few, but there's a lot missing in between. And so sometimes, like here in the purples, it's a sudden change from the darker lavender at the bottom where it fades up into a light. And yet when you stand back and see this as a whole, your eye doesn't just settle in on one spot. And I just think the overall look of it works really well. This is the back side. So, it was Fair Isle. It kind of makes its own design with the floats on the back side. I tried to keep them 2, 3, and 4 stitches in the float. Didn't go more than that. And if you saw the previous videos about this, when I first started it, I knitted it in the round with a steek. And I thought about waiting and showing you that steek, but you can YouTube and see quite a bit about a steek, about cutting open a steek. I know Andrea on Fruity Knitting, one of my favorite things to watch, she has a really good demonstration of the steek and cutting it open. So I didn't take the time for that. But one other thing that I did, on each end, it is knit 2, purl 2 for a ribbing, and I variegated my colors. I didn't try to match the 2 ends. This end here is definitely a different color scheme from here. So that's the ends. Okay, the big decision I had, and always seems to be for me when I'm doing a throw, is after you cut the steek open, actually you need to make the decisions before you cut the steek open, but how am I going to finish off that steek edge? Because you have to do something with it. And I thought, well, if I had a lot of felting needles, I guess I could probably spend a lot of time, trying to felt that opened edge. Didn't really want to take the time to do that. And so I went back and looked at one of my other throws, and the steek is inside of, I actually knitted this ribbing. I did a gray on the one side, did a purl edge, which helped it fold over, and I just did knit every row on this side just for something different. And then I had to come back and sew this edge down by hand. A lot of work, and this is thick because you actually have, when the steek, you get, double layer of yarn with Fair Isle because it's 2 colors, and then a layer of the darker gray folds over, and then a layer of the light gray. So technically there's like 4 thicknesses of knitted product in this border. Now it is holding up beautifully, I have to say. It's holding its shape. I use this little throw a lot, and that was good, but it was also a lot of labor, and I thought, I don't think I want to do that again. So I played around with putting yarn on a needle and thread to see what. I didn't really want to fold my steek over and put a ribbon down it because I would be, once again, really making it thick. And I wanted to get it done, didn't want to wait for ribbon to arrive. And when I had looked for ribbon before, I couldn't find anything that I really liked that went with the look of the throw, unless you just went to a solid brown or something like that. So I ruled that out. What I ended up with, make my long story as short as I can. Before I split the steek open, my was 9 stitches in the steek, so that the middle row of stitches is where I cut. So technically I ended up with 4 stitches on each side of the cut steek, because where you cut on that middle row, it kind of goes away. But before I cut that, I actually took needle and thread, regular thread, and I just did a quick run on both sides of that middle row just to help secure the stitches down so they wouldn't unravel. With this wool, it's got enough texture to it. It's not just going to immediately unravel, but I thought, this is a throw. It's not gonna get, pampered a lot. Probably it's gonna get used. So I didn't want to worry about the steek ending up coming undone. So I did the stitching by hand, cut the steek, and then I ended up with this lavender yarn, a crochet hook, and I went in right along the bottom edge of the steek where the steek stops and the actual throw design starts, and I did a single crochet over up here at the top, went back down, picked up, so it wrapped the edge. So there's a little thickness there, but it's good and sturdy. It's has a little, let me turn it this way, has a little bit of a waffle once in a while where when I which in time will relax out. When I blocked it, I didn't have quite enough pins to keep that 100% tight, but good enough. And so I'm very pleased with that. This is the back side. Let me get it up here in the camera. So it's really tucked that steek in nicely. Nice finish from the front edge. It's just kind of there, but your eye doesn't go just to that spot. I didn't have any more actual gray, but because I could have put a gray in and that probably would have been the least noticeable. But I decided there were so many colors in this blanket, and when I put this particular lavender up against all of it, it just kind of went away. Because like I said, I didn't want to put something that was going to be super bright to where, your eye would go right to that, like here on the yellows, your eye wants to go right to the yellow. So just note to self, if you want your border or outside band to be not make a huge statement, then pick a color that's just kind of going to go away. Unlike the bottom edge here, you know, you see that, right? And I intended for that. I wanted the bottom border and the top border to be more eye-catching than what the outer edge is. So I think I accomplished all of that. I'm pretty happy with this. It actually was chilly enough last night that I used this for the first time. And that was good. That made me happy. So that's the end of my big project. I thought I would have video from my daughter Carrie the next nice day. I'll have to have her do an update because we've been tracking the work in their backyard and they've done a lot. And so some of her flowers, we'll post some pictures of her flowers and just kind of an update to their backyard. They're not done, but they've done a lot of work. I think that brings me up to date. So right now, my next big project is picking what little critter I'm going to start. And it'll be one that I haven't made before. I'm actually thinking about making one of the teddy bears. I know it's, you know, not exotic, but I think they're awfully cute. And so I think maybe the bear is going to be the winner. I certainly have more to work on. I haven't made the hippopotamus. I've made the giraffe. Oh my goodness. Almost all of them in the first book and some of them twice. So trying to think of those that are in the second book. So I'll keep you posted to my progress with that and if I come up with any new ideas about them. The one thing I would encourage, especially those of you, I've noticed some are doing really an exquisite job of branching out and kind of putting your own flavor to them. You're coming up with some really, really sweet ideas for their clothing, changing it up, using maybe a little more Fair Isle, using a little more cables. And I encourage you, now that some of you have made several, and if you feel like you just really have to do it exactly like the pattern, you can, but there's something fun about putting your own little twist. I've seen some really cute little hats that have inspired me to do more hats. I think that just adds to more character, gives them a little more character and personality. But I think it also expands our knitting skills. Maybe you don't know the dimensions around the head. How many do I cast on? Well, do it just like you were doing a regular hat. You can, you know, measure a person's head and do a few less stitches than the width of the circumference around the head. Same for the little critters. Have to figure out how for some of them to put openings for their ears. And so there's a little playing around with that, and I think that's kind of fun to do. So I encourage all of you. And the other thing I think on my next video, I don't think I will get it added here, but I continue to get a lot of questions about those pesky tennis shoes and picking up those stitches where the tongue begins. And I've inserted that on one of my videos, so I will go back and try to find where that is, and or I will add that to one of my videos about picking up those stitches. Once you've done it, it's like, oh, okay, I get what it is. And I didn't bring a tennis shoe in here with me, but it's just picking up on the back side the stitches. It's 3 or 4 stitches, something like that, and then start knitting on those for the tongue. So maybe that will help, but I will try to incorporate that on one of my next videos, if not the end of this one. So I think that wraps it up. No other big project. I do know that there is another throw in my future. So I've been thinking about how that would be. It's not going to be all the colors. I've done that. So I do like making the throws, though. They're it's kind of nice to have a big project going, and I really don't need any more sweaters, so I'm trying to refrain from doing sweaters. But the throws are kind of nice, and they're great to give. A valued present to give, I might say, valuable time-wise and yarn-wise, but you don't have to worry about size so much with a throw as if you were making a garment for somebody. So that's kind of what's rolling around in the back of my brain. So I hope you are all well. I've so appreciated the many of you that have reached out and continue to do so. It's been a blast, and hopefully with fall being here now, I'll get another video made here in the next few weeks. So keep you posted. So have a good day, and have a beautiful fall wherever you are, as in seasonal fall. Got to be careful how I say that. Anyhow, bless all of you. Bye now.